1:30, so we will get started. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Economic Standing Policy Committee for Wednesday, April the 28th. We'll start with the reconciliation statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we're gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also the home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. I'll now ask the City Clerk to do a roll call.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Councillor Carlson.
Present. On mute, sorry.
Councillor Kaufman.
Present.
Councillor Croson.
Present.
Councillor Morrow. Councillor Parker.
Here.
Acting Mayor Hagan.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Here.
Mayor Spearman.
Present.
Councillor Campbell.
Well, here I am.
And Councillor Morrow, are you there? Okay. Thank you. We have 8 of the 9. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to adoption of the agenda. Councillor Carlson has requested that we reorder, so it'll be 4.1 followed by the published 4.3 will be the second presentation, which is Performing Arts Center, and then 4.2 and 4.4. So we will reorder if there's no objection from council. So if we can have a resolution to adopt the agenda as amended. Councillor Carlson, all in favor? Any opposed? There's none. Then we have a resolution for the consent agenda from Councillor Campbell. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Economic Standing Policy Committee held on Wednesday, April 21st, 2021 be approved, and that the Mayor and the City Clerk be authorized to sign the same. Councillor Campbell?
If there are no errors or omissions, I will call for the vote.
Okay, question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the first presentation.
Is now joining.
I believe Councillor Morrow just joined us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've just gone through the acknowledgement statement, the roll call, and the agenda. We'll be going 4.1, 4.3, 4.2, and 4.4 in order. So now we will start with 4.1, construction progress at Lethbridge and District Exhibition. And I'm going to invite Mr. Mike Workington and Mr. Bruce Galtz to present us with an update on the construction progress. Welcome, Mr. Workington and Mr. Galtz.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Spearman. And sorry, Bruce, were you going to say something there? Thank you to all of you who were able to join us this morning, and thank you as well to those of you who were able to make it to our groundbreaking ceremony a couple of weeks ago. As I'm sure many of you have done, you've either heard about, you've seen, or you've driven by the site and seen the updates to the site, and it is very drastic when you drive by. It looks much different than it did a mere 2 months ago. And so what I've sent in way of presentation is an ongoing dashboard that looks at 4 main components as we walk through this project. One is the work that's either completed or ongoing. The second is sort of the key milestones and how we progress towards them. The third is the budget and what the spend looks like. It will ultimately include a forecast as we start ramping up spend and as we see the tender packages begin to go out. And then lastly is a look at the trades. As has always been a key measuring tool for us, it was a conversation about how we drive jobs within this region and specifically within the city, so we wanted to capture that. I'll start with the work ongoing. I don't know if the presentation has the PDF we sent in, but I assume everyone has it in front of them. Obviously, I think everybody is aware that we awarded Ward Brothers Construction the construction management contract previous to Christmas. And what has happened since has been significant. So we have sent out our tender package 1. It was returned late in March, and it actually did come in slightly under budget, which is nice. So I am happy to say that to this point we are on schedule and a little bit under budget. However, the next 2 tender packages are kind of where the meat of this project is. We did present our development permit to the City of Lethbridge, which was approved with a few caveats. In late January, those caveats have been dealt with, and that is being resubmitted this Friday for the for the final approval of the development permit, which will ultimately lead to our foundation permit, which we anticipate submitting mid-March in order to receive approval prior to the June 1st deadline for our next tranche of provincial funding. The one point I do want to bring up is the tree removal and the reuse RFP. It was probably the most visual piece of what's been going on at the park. We removed over 225 trees from the site, over 1 million pounds of wood product, which was recycled into over 10,000 board feet of lumber, which is currently in the process of being recycled into the furniture that will make up administration tables, boardroom tables, meeting tables, soft seating tables,
Is now
cafeteria, as well as some of the other soft seating tables around the building. It is certainly a unique element of this project. It is something that we did allocate significant resource toward, because we wanted to be able to maintain that story of the urban forest that existed here at the park and carry that through to the new construction. Upcoming, we do our tender package for concrete and pile foundations is currently on the street now as of last week. We anticipate the main superstructure tender, as well as the building envelope and the finishes, going out towards the end of May, just shortly after the May long weekend. And lastly, we do anticipate a landscaping and final product site design in a tender package 4 that we anticipate going out later in the summer. However, that date is to be confirmed. It may be included in package 3. Some key milestones. As you've seen, we have been working on earthworks. We've begun with the approval we received from the city last week on the stormwater pond. We have begun the excavation of the stormwater pond. We've been moving structural clay into the site. We do anticipate the earthwork to be complete mid-May to early June, when we anticipate having the pile foundations ready to drill beginning middle of June, taking till the end of July. And we hope to have structural steel begin in the early fall. Now, that is the big question mark currently with the timing. As I mentioned before, everything to this point is on schedule. The structural steel, due to the supply chain issues, is the largest flag we're currently monitoring, and we'll be able to monitor that a little bit closer once that tender package is on the market and we begin to get some estimates back on when we anticipate that steel arriving here in town. But we do anticipate building the superstructure of this from October through the winter into early February. We are still on track at this point in time to finish major construction prior to Christmas of 2022, with us commissioning and moving in for the first 3 to 4 months of 2023. In terms of budget, in the top right corner of the dashboard, as has always been the case, the project budget is set at $70.6 million. Our actual spend to date is just shy of $1 million, with $8.3 million committed, meaning we have an understanding or a tender in place of committed funds to that amount. The forecast, as I mentioned, will be a rolling forecast once we have cost certainty on all the tender packages. So that will be added in likely for the next presentation to this committee, and it will allocate those numbers. Something that we're very proud of through this project is our use of local trades at this point. And so our total man hours of 3,920 man hours, 3,500 of those are with local Lethbridge trades. Over 70% of our trades to date have been local businesses. So this project certainly is a community project that is investing money back into the construction industry here in Lethbridge. It's at this point in time, as I say, there's not a lot to report on, but I will open it up for questions. I see a hand raised as well.
Councillor
I don't know how
Kaufman.
to address that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Workington, for the information. Good news story, you're $60 million on right now, so that's excellent to hear.
That's Bruce's leadership, Councillor Kaufman.
Yeah, thanks.
Way to go. Thank you very much. Look forward to positive messages like this in the future. On the issue of the local trades and the person hours that you were referring to, Mr. Workington.
Yes.
If somebody could just maybe inform me on the tender process. The exhibition is an independent organization from the city, although the city owns the property. Are we still subject to the same rules of tendering as we would on a city-led project?
Yeah. So we're not as bound to the new West Trade Agreement as the city is. However, we are abiding by those same rules within our tender process, and we are opening this up to public process. And to this point, it's been the best value for our dollar has presented itself as local trades. So we are still abiding by those rules. However, we are not as bound by them as the city of Lethbridge is.
Okay, thank you. So if you do, and I really respect and appreciate the fact that you are following the process, at least in terms of the tender packages, that mechanism. If we do get a bid scenario or situation where local is marginally or insignificantly more, we have the ability, or you have the ability then, to secure local product, local services outside of a process that we would have, correct?
Correct. And so, Bruce, maybe I'll have you speak, but I'll just jump in first and say the guidance that we've received on this specifically is that we follow the best value for dollars so that we ensure that the money goes the furthest on this project. And so we do have the ability, if there's better value from a local trade, to use them and not necessarily be bound to the low bidder. However, that being said, we don't anticipate these numbers to maintain as high as they are because there are elements of this building that we anticipate not being able to be completed by local trades.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Pinkston has her hand up. That
Maybe,
caveat looking.
May I just add to Mike's comments is not only is it value, but we also consider risk. So, you know, if it's a big project, you know, a big portion that they're doing, and it's a smaller firm locally, that's something to weigh, or can they, you know, take on that risk in their portfolio? So we do consider that.
Okay, thank you. Ms., did you have something to add to that?
Yes.
Oh, you've gone.
Yes, if I may.
You're partially muted, Ms. Pinkston.
Yes. Okay. I just wanted to add that the funding for the city's contribution to that is related to grants, and so the eligibility of those expenditures need to ensure that you know, we follow the proper procurement processes. So that's, I just wanted to highlight that as a reminder in terms of the funding, the city's portion of that project, anyways.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I was just going to say, and that is very similar to the province's take on their contribution to the project, which is why, although we fall technically outside the new West Trade Agreement, we are abiding by the new West Trade Agreement in our procurement.
Excellent, thank you. And final, less of a question, more of just a comment. I'm very appreciative of what you've done with the trees. Members of council have received emails from people in the community who are quite upset, and the loss of 200 trees is definitely noticeable. Appreciate the fact that you're recycling them and that they're going to be incorporated into part of the facility. Do you have a strategy as well for landscaping, any replacement, any consideration of that?
Yeah, I'm actually glad that came up. I should have mentioned it. So the landscaping plan itself is a one-to-one planting to removing. So for every tree and shrub we removed, we will be planting a new one in the landscaping plan. Now, obviously, they won't be old growth trees, etc. But another unique element that we did is from the 120-year-old cottonwood that was removed from the very south of the building footprint. And Councillor Higgin and Councillor Croson, and actually Mayor Spearman, I took their photo by the trunk of this tree. What we did is we took over 200 cuttings of that tree, and they're currently being propagated in a greenhouse to also be reconstituted into the landscaping. So we're actually going to carry forward the vegetation that existed on site in a different form as we move forward.
Oh, that's wonderful. And they're cottonwoods, though, so I won't be visiting in May.
I have the same challenge.
All right, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for the presentation. And I love, just to echo what Councillor Cobbin said, I love what you're doing with the trees. It's great. That's fantastic. And also, just going back a bit this morning, thank you for the box, the presentation of the new thing that's coming up. I love the concept and the package of barbecue material. So I've got my my beer and my ketchup and my garlic salt all in one right now. So I just want you to know that. Thank you. But the question I wanted to ask you, and I know it's really early going on, but as you started, has there been any surprises yet as you dig into the foundations and the soils and things like that, or has it been pretty much what you expected?
There was to be honest with you, there haven't been many surprises. There's been some small elements that have come up. We did have to do some asbestos abatement on the 2 washroom facilities that were on the site. Minimal in expense. Put our site work back a little bit on schedule, which did not impact our overall schedule. And so that's probably the biggest surprise we've come across. And I don't know how much of a surprise that was given the date of when those buildings were built, but it was not in the original schedule. Beyond that, I think that's the only major surprise we've come up, other than old parking spots from the campground that were buried underneath and some elements like that, but nothing that stopped the project or put anything on hold.
Mike, if I can jump in, maybe just out of interest. Some people noticed the big red structural machine that was sitting on site there for a while. They did destructive testing on piles to see how firm the soil was, and it affects the design of the building. And more in a good news, not so much surprise, but good news is the soil bearing in that site was very good and was exceeded the design requirements that we had. So it allowed us to then redesign some of the structural components of the building because the soil was so good. So maybe surprisingly, because the Henderson Lake's there and lots of moisture in the ground and whatnot. But that was good news, and it allowed us to recapture some cost savings in the design of the building. So so far so good.
Sorry, I was just going to say, maybe I'm just trying to think. Did the trolley train go out to the exhibition? Were there trolley tracks by any chance? Or Belinda probably knows that, or did they go out? I don't know.
So we did have, and Belinda can probably help me answer this, but I think it was the Red Line that came out here, and it was part of the World Dry Farming Congress, I think. But we haven't discovered any tracks in our excavation. Actually, what we did do when 3rd Avenue was torn up last year is we did contact the construction company that was disposing of those old tracks, and we actually got a hold of 2 lengths of tie to put our old streetcar that we have here on site on as part to incorporate it in the design of the new facility to represent that historical linkage to downtown.
Great. I see, Belinda, you have an answer?
7th Avenue and then down Park Drive and then turned around and went back. So you'd find the tracks on city property on the road in the exhibition, not in there. That's all had road work done.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. So if I'm reading this correctly, you're going to send out tender package number 3, which is when stuff really starts to happen. That goes out May the 24th with it's resolved or responses back by June the 15th. And then structural steel starts October, if all goes well, completed by February 2022, I think. And
yes, so
okay.
it shows as February 2021, but yes, you are correct in how you're reading that.
Okay, so you'll be doing the work in the winter time in an open structure, right? Because the building envelope work only starts on December the 6th. So you'll be working inside through next winter, but there won't be protection from the elements because not completing that until August of 2022, right? Am I reading that right?
That is correct. And so we've allocated within the construction budget hoarding and heating for the winter of 21-22.
Okay, all right. Okay, very good. Looks like an impressive plan. Great to see it started. I don't see any further questions from council. And with that, we'll thank you for the update and we'll look for the resolution. I had a resolution here because I signed it. Hey, it's, moved by Councillor Higgin, or Acting Mayor Higgin, construction progress at Lethbridge and District Exhibition. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receives the report and presentations as information. Acting Mayor Higgin.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman, and thank you very much, Bruce and Mike, for the presentation. It's really exciting to see. I've been by there a few times here to see what's going on, and it looks like movement is happening, which is really exciting. Looking forward to actually seeing some structure there because it just seems like that's where it really starts to come together. And so thank you very much for everything that has been done to date. Appreciate the update. And I will call for the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Thank you. That is unanimous. We'll now move on to 4.3, which is the Recreation and Culture Performing Arts Center Design and Construction. And the presenters are, and before that, I'm going to make a statement. We'll get to the presenters in a second. But I did want to say at the beginning, as we discuss these projects, now we're moving on to the CIP information sessions for specific projects, which is to prepare us for the CIP budget deliberation week of May the 10th to the 14th. So we have online engagement where we are gathering information from the public. That process closes today, April the 28th. We have a consultant who will compile the information, and that information will be shared with the Economic SPC as additional information for the week of the CIP budget deliberations. So the next steps are that a draft document will be prepared for budget deliberations. And with that, at this point, we're just receiving the last 3 presentations as information, even though we're passing motions. We're just passing motions to receive the information being presented today. We are not approving any projects. So with that clarification, we'll move on. and ask our presenters to present on Performing Arts Center design and construction. And who will lead off?
I will be leading off, Mayor Spearman.
Okay,
Robin
thank you.
Harper. We're gonna have a slide, I believe. I'd like to thank Economic SPC for the opportunity to be here today. We've got a little bit of a hybrid model here for a presentation. As mentioned, I will lead off. I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce the members of the Performing Arts Steering Committee. Chairperson is Councillor Kaufman. Other members of council that are part of this committee are Councillor Carlson. Other members are Councillor Kaufman and Councillor Campbell. We have two members from the Performing Arts Center Advocacy Group who are also part of this committee and are with us today, Diane King and Suzanne Lint. And I will turn it over to Councillor Carlson as the chairman. However, administration will be available to answer any questions specific to the proposed project at the end. Councillor Carlson.
Thanks, Mr. Harper. Thank you, Mayor Spearman, members of Economic SPC. Pleased to be here today on behalf of the committee to provide not just a bit of a presentation on the Performing Arts Center, but also sort of a wrap-up, a final committee report on the work done to date. Robin did introduce the members of committee, Councillors Kaufman, Campbell, and myself. It was the three C's. We're your representatives. We have Diane King, as well as Suzanne Lint. Suzanne sort of tag teamed out Ms. Dawn Lighty, who had to leave our committee halfway through. So we appreciate all the work that was done. Members of Economic SPC, as a committee, we've gone on quite a journey. And even though we've kept council informed with regular updates, we thought, we appreciate, I should say, the opportunity to provide our final update and our request and recommendation to council regarding the future Performing Arts Center ahead of our CIP deliberations. On a personal note, it's been quite the journey for me. It was in 2006, 2007 that I was standing in front of council as a community advocate, presenting on behalf of ART, A-R-T, Art Rebuilding Together. And that was a multi-facility strategy to address the needs for the arts community through several projects. It was, I believe, the SAG renovation, the Bowman Arts Center replacement, the Yates enhancements, and also a Performing Arts Center. All of these were identified over 20 years ago, back in before 2000, as gaps and needs in our community. And I'm proud to say that all of them have been accomplished except the Performing Arts Center, which is why we're here today. I should point out that, interestingly enough, Council, we did just approve our most current Rec and Culture Master Plan, and still a Performing Arts Center is identified as one of the top, if not the top, priorities in our community, as well as in our strategic plan, in our People, Places for All. The Performing Arts Center is identified as a need and an objective and a goal. As I said, the steering committee was formed by council in, I believe, 2017. We went through much of the work that council required of us, providing direction and oversight on D34, provide updates and information, work with our administration. I've got to thank, and I'm not going to thank everyone because I'll forget someone, but Robin Harper, Gillian Bracken, Carrie Nightingale were integral to the work, and they did yeoman's job helping our committee. We have accomplished much of the assigned work that council assigned to us, and that's what we're doing here today, is to sort of tie up the loose ends and move forward. We knew that in order to move any further, a site identification and designation is required. In order to get to the functional design, the complete costing, the operating model, none of that work can be completed in the absence of a site selection. So I think that's important for council to know. In late 2020, early 2021, the steering committee did conduct a site selection process, similar to other site selection processes we've undertaken before. We evaluate all the criteria, including functional factors, planning considerations, community fit, cost for the sites, etc. The committee identified 14 potential sites. We narrowed it down to 6 shortlisted sites, which our administration, again, did excellent work in providing all the details and information for the committee to debate and discuss each site and rate them on their merits as the preferred site for a future performing arts center. And that's what I'd like to bring to you today, is that the Civic Common, where I was going to say where we're sitting, but no, it's only you, Your Worship, are sitting on the Civic Common site today, is the preferred site. It is that 4-block square section that includes the City Hall, Civic Ice Center, Civic Field, the Yates Theatre, LSCO, the Old Courthouse. And well, I don't need to keep describing it to all of you. Before I go on any further, I'm going to ask maybe our community members, Diane King or Suzanne Lint, if they'd like to provide a community perspective on the process.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carlson. Good afternoon, Your Worship, Mayor Spearman and councillors, administration, media. Thank you very much for allowing the Performing Arts Centre Advocacy Group to address you today. I would like to just begin by saying that Lethbridge has always been a centre renowned for the value and for the quality of its performing arts. The first facility for the arts was built in 1885 when the population was just at 2,000. The second was built in 1910, and it was the Majestic Theatre, and it was actually, there was a population of only 8,000, and it housed 800 patrons. Moving forward, the Genevieve B. Yates Center Auditorium was built in 1966 to meet a capacity of 488 patrons. And right after that, in 1980, the Sterndale Bennett Theatre was built, and that accommodated an additional 180 seats. The Yates, though, has been booked in advance for 3 years and is we have not been able to meet the needs of the performing arts in Lethbridge. The performers themselves have utilized many of the options, the venue options within the city, but they are not meeting the actual needs. And so the ability for us to grow the arts in the city of Lethbridge has been lacking for many years already, as Jeff has already identified. In 2016, CASA was built to replace the creating space that was the Bowman Arts facility. We celebrate all of these venues that have been built in their various forms for the arts. However, just as curling and hockey require ice, they require different venues to support their sport. For more than 20 years, as Jeff has already outlined, the community advocates have identified needs and gaps for the performing arts and have been advocating for a performing arts center. The city identified a performing arts center as early as 2000 in its PERC study. The Recreation and Culture Master Plans 2007, 2013, 2017, and again in 2021 have all identified a performing arts center as a high priority. In 2021, there was a household questionnaire conducted as part of the master plan, and it captured that a performing arts facility is among the community's top 3 priorities for new recreation and culture priorities. Approximately 63% of the respondents to that ranked the facilities in this following order. They wanted 40% looked for interpretive and educational spaces, but the performing arts, show spaces, and theater spaces were an additional 60%. The master plan amenity investment prioritization ranking, quite a name, lists the performing arts space as the second highest of 24 indoor recreation and culture amenity priorities. The plan recommends that this amenity, the Performing Arts Center, be realized in the short term, in the next 0 to 3 years, again, ahead of all recreation facilities. Council's own strategic plan for 2017-2021 includes the establishment of viable options for a performing arts centre as part of the People Places for All strategy. The Performing Arts Committee, Performing Arts Centre Steering Committee has been an excellent steward of funds provided by City Council. The committee has had rigorous debate about consultant recommendations, our own vision and principles, but in the end, we are recommending that a traditional performing arts centre be located in the Civic Common and that the comprehensive site plan be approved by Council. The Performing Arts Centre Advocacy Group and Steering Committees fully recognize the impact that COVID has had on so many levels, and not the least of which is financially on municipal, provincial, and federal governments. We fully understand that it is not wise to invest in funding the design of a performing arts centre years in advance of the actual build. However, Lethbridge is the 3rd largest and fastest growing city in the province of Alberta. A major factor in people's decision to move here is based on the amenities Lethbridge offers. A performing arts centre is the final remaining capital priority for this council. If council does not support the motion to name the site for the Performing Arts Centre and approve the comprehensive site plan, we will be no further ahead than we were 21 years ago. $1 million has been spent on studies, countless hours of administration expertise, tremendous advocacy by citizens of Lethbridge, time, energy, and visionary planning by city departments and councils will all have been for naught. Therefore, while we remain in the throes of COVID-19, it is difficult to foresee the future, but we believe federal and provincial culture dollars will be announced at some point, and that it is critical that we be in a more shovel-ready position when that happens. Therefore, our advocacy group requests of you as council, as you deliberate the 2022-2032 CIP, that you retain the Performing Arts Centre in the 2022-2032 CIP, approve the Civic Common as the future home of the Performing Arts Centre, and approve the comprehensive site plan as prepared by your very capable administration who collaborated on its development. Our Performing Arts Centre will serve Lethbridge and communities far and wide for the next 100 years. We implore you to move this project forward. As visionary civic leaders, it is up to you to ensure that a Performing Arts Centre remains in the 2022-2032 CIP and is ultimately built to meet the needs of audiences and performers. We must plant trees under whose shade we do not intend to sit. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I had some closing, but I think Diane's captured it nicely. I'll leave it at that. The members of the steering committee are here to answer any questions of my colleagues, but we also have Mr. Harper, Ms. Bracken, and Ms. Nightingale, who've got all the actual detailed knowledge on the project. So, Robin, unless you had anything further?
Sorry, that darn mute button gets me every time. If I could just ask Janessa to pull up the slide that has the project summary on it, it'd be appreciated. So just in closing, the Performing Arts Centre design and construction project is being presented. It's obviously, as mentioned, pre-design review, operating model, and design and construction of a 950-seat traditional performing arts centre. As mentioned, the recommended site is Civic Commons. It's all the price, the cost is shown there. Also includes demolition of existing structures, as well as landscaping associated with it. Next slide, please. So we're available for any questions or responses that you have.
Thanks, Rob. And I saw Mike Workington taking notes. I'm hoping he's keeping some saplings for us.
Good. I have a question on the 5.3 million. What's the breakdown of those expenses for the operating costs?
That is fairly comprehensive, and it was identified in the AMS consulting plan. It includes everything from wages, utilities, all operational costs, et cetera, that would be associated with operation of a traditional 950-seat theater. We can provide a little more detail as far as the breakdown of that, and I think the intent is to provide that breakdown in the information that City Council will get in the course of deliberations in May.
Okay, is the facility to be run on a fee-for-service basis, or is it to be run as a city asset with city employees?
That has not been determined yet, Mayor Spearman. Obviously, as part of the pre-design review, we would look at the operating model as to what makes the most sense for this. Obviously, as well, if there was an opportunity to have an operating model that would be effective and efficient, other than the city operation, we would definitely look at something like that. This cost is associated with the city operating it.
So this cost is the top end with operated by city employees. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Oh, and Mayor Spearman, just a little further answer to that. Your question is exactly the question the steering committee has been deliberating on. We're of a belief, and my colleagues can correct me if I'm wrong, that is a top end number, and that if we do more detailed, once a site is identified, we can do a better detailed design and operating model and get that not just the design and build costs, but also the operating costs down. We're of that belief. Fingers crossed.
Okay, so personally, I'd like to just see the broad categories. How much is wages and benefits? How much is utilities? How much are other things? So how much potentially could be saved? And what's the bottom end and what's the top end of those operating costs? Thanks.
Thanks, and we can provide that.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Right, thank you, Mayor Chairman. I mean, right now what we're going to do is commit to building it at some point. It might not even be this exact one. Is that correct?
When you say this exact one, are you referring to like a 950 seat?
Okay, so this is the third iteration of what I've seen of what Performing Arts Center design could be. I remember looking at one that was a flexible use design as well that costs a little bit less. So I'm just wondering, if we commit the land to it, does that mean we're also committing to this design? I mean, do they go together, or is there a little bit of flexibility once the land is committed that maybe that's not the cost? That's what the cost could be now, but that might not be the cost. Is that correct?
I can try and answer that. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. City Council has control, obviously. Right. The Performing Arts Steering Committee did recommend the traditional Performing Arts Center. But the most important thing, I think, right now for us is to designate the location. And then City Council is always in the driver's seat. And should they decide they want something more grand or less grand, that is up to the will of the 9 sitting around the table at that time.
Okay, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Pete, we're looking at a 10-year CIP, but how many dollars specifically are you looking for in the first 4 years?
Mayor Spearman, I'll answer that with a couple options. How about? I think Diane put it very, very succinctly and honestly that the steering committee was well aware of the financial and economic devastation the world, the country, our province has been in. And so we felt at that time it was not fiscally responsible to spend dollars today that may not be useful 10 years from now. So if we spent 6.3 on the design, which we were approved to do, that design may not come to fruition for 10 years. So at this point, the committee's actually not asking for a dollar figure. We're asking for the commitment of the land that council say this is where the future performing arts will be, and to commit to keeping the Performing Arts Center in the CIP, but unfunded, similar to what we did, I believe, with the exhibition. And that seemed to be a very successful project. We kept it alive, kept it as one of our priorities. And then we all, the exhibition, council, the city, community partners, beat the bushes, beat up other orders of politicians to find funding. And that, I think, is what our ask is not for an outlay of dollars right now, but a commitment of the land and a commitment to it still, the performing arts being a priority to the city. Unless, Diane, you had something further?
You're muted, Diane. Yeah.
I believe there was a cost associated with the comprehensive site plan of $900,000, if I'm not mistaken.
And thank you, Diane. That city administration will be bringing that project forward next. And so that's a separate project, but thank you.
Okay, I apologize.
Thank you. I have a question then for Ms. Pinkson. I could be wrong. Ms. Pinkson, we allocate $6 million in the last iteration of the CIP. How much has been spent, and what happens to the unspent dollars?
Mayor Spearman, in the last CIP, that's correct. There was some funding allocated to this project. There was some planning dollars used to do some of the work that has been talked about today. The remaining $6.8 million has not been spent or allocated, and it was included in the estimate for the available funding for this CIP. So any unallocated dollars has been returned to the available funding for council's consideration in this current CIP that we're looking at.
For any other project, or does it stay with this project? Or does council have that discretion?
Council always has that discretion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from members of council? I see none. If there are no further questions, then we would deal with the resolution. Councillor Carlson, you were part of the presentation. Is it safe to assume you're moving this resolution?
Sure, and unless you're thanking me in it, then Councillor Campbell or Kaufman could carry it.
Okay. Who wants to move it? Councillor Kaufman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Moved by Councillor Kaufman. Recreation and Culture, Performing Arts Center Design and Construction. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentations as information, and we'll thank the presenters. And Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you to Councillor Campbell and certainly Councillor Carlson as well for work on the committee, but especially to our community participants. We don't, as a council, move projects forward without community input and community involvement, so certainly appreciate the work that they've done. As Councillor Councillor Carlson identified as well in his opening remarks, staff did a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes to put information together for the community to consider, and appreciate the work that they've done as well. Again, this is a motion to receive, and further deliberation will occur the week of May the 10th, I believe. So with that, I'll call the question unless there's additional debate.
Okay, there is no further debate. Question's been called. All in favor? Are any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to what was previously 4.2. And we'll invite Mr. Andrew Malcolm, our Urban Revitalization Manager, to speak to us about the 2022 to 2025 CIP Civic Common Comprehensive Site Plan. Mr. Malcolm.
Good afternoon, Chair Spearman and members of Economic SPC. Thank you very much for having me this afternoon to present on two planning projects, the Civic Common Comprehensive Site Plan and the Warehouse District Area Redevelopment Plan. These two projects differ in the level of detail of planning and their specific outcomes, but they both represent important planning exercises to ensure that the city is best positioned to guide and facilitate public and private investment and redevelopment into the future. Hoping that we can get the slides up. I don't see them on my screen at least. Perfect, thank you. Next slide, next slide. Great. Oh, can you go to this? I guess we can do the warehouse district first. I will, or do we want to do it in the order of the agenda as presented?
Well, we were doing 4.2, which is Civic Common Comprehensive Site Plan. What is it?
Should just be a different slide deck.
Yeah. 4.4 is on the screen, so we're looking for 4.2.
It's the urban revitalization, the Civic Common Comprehensive Plan. You had the warehouse district. Got it?
Perfect, thank you. So the first of these projects is the Civic Common Comprehensive Site Plan, which when completed will provide a detailed understanding of the site layout or layouts, adjacent land impacts and opportunities, and the public infrastructure investment such as utility and servicing, which would be required to support the redevelopment of the site, including phasing strategy and cost estimates. At this point, I would just like to flag that throughout the entry process of the projects in the CIP process, including the online feedback tool, this project was written out or entered as the Civic Common Master Plan, which has already been completed. So if there's some feedback through that we've already done this, yes, we have done the Civic Common Master Plan. This is the next level down, so which we apologize if there was an issue there. Next slide, please. So as many of you are aware, the Civic Common is a 4-square block section located between 6th and 4th Avenue South and 9th Street and 11th Street South. In 2018, we completed that Civic Common Master Plan, establishing a vision to guide the future decisions in fulfilling the community's vision for redevelopment in this area. And now with that vision set, it is pertinent to move on to the next level of detailed planning for the site, and as well as the surrounding area, in alignment with many of the previously completed studies, plans, and reports that have outlined the short and long-term needs and goals for redevelopment in the area. Next slide, please. So again, this is a continuation or deeper dive into the work that's already been established under the Civic Common Master Plan. And with that more comprehensive detail, we are really looking for two connected deliverables. One is a comprehensive site plan that visual the layout of the site, and along with a corresponding redevelopment analysis or report, which builds the understanding around the conditions around the site. A listing here of all the more specific components that would comprise of this $900,000 project. Lots of different technical studies and evaluations, understanding layouts, and then as we move into the redevelopment analysis, understanding the development conditions with adjacent land uses, market conditions, and the development potential for an extended plan area. You'll see in the image below, we would basically include a block radius of the Civic Commons site, understanding that adjacencies across the street, servicing utilities, all doesn't or was not confined to the site itself, and we need to have that understanding. Next slide, please. So there are a number of benefits and connection points to existing plans, policies, and strategic directions, but I will just focus on the first two in particular, those being the support for revitalization of our urban core with the purpose of supporting economic growth and development, and preparing the necessary work to support shovel-ready projects, which will position the city better off to secure other funding from other levels of government in the future. This is obviously connected to the previous presentation, but I do hope that it is considered independently, because this level of analysis and next level planning is required for this site, regardless of what the future use is with such a facility like a performing arts center. So with that, I will next slide and open to questions.
Okay. Are there any questions on the Civic Common Comprehensive Site Plan as presented? The 900,000 is not associated with any other specific project. This 900,000 that's intended to do this work stands on its own and is associated with this specific project. Is that correct, Mr. Malcolm?
That is correct. That is to bring this site up for redevelopment into a state that can support multiple different opportunities depending on where future directions of council may go, and we will work towards that if funded, regardless of other specific decisions.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Thanks, Mr. Malcolm. In the illustration that you have attached to the information sheet, that's just a picture, right? That's not exactly what you guys are planning.
No, yeah, that is I believe there's an asterisk there. I don't know if it's showing up, but is of a completely different site. It just gives an idea of what kind of detail would go into a comprehensive site plan. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's actually from Texas or somewhere down south.
Don't recall a hospital or a bowling green ever in our discussions, but thank you for that.
Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Mr. Malcolm, for the information. Yes, same concern as Councillor Miyashiro, especially if this is going to the public. We need to be very clear on that schematic that it is artist rendering or whatever, because we will get calls about hospitals and bowling greens and things of that nature. This project is unique, and I appreciate the fact that it addresses, you've expanded the scope to an additional block, but it's especially so for the residents that live predominantly on the east side of the existing Civic Common. What do you envision for their participation in the process? Because they're more than just passive participants. They are in many senses stakeholders, because whatever we put on that property is going to have an effect or an impact on them. So what do you see as their role in the process?
Yeah, it's a great question, Councillor Kaufman. So currently the properties, the properties completely surrounding this site are covered under existing area redevelopment plans. So there's existing policy in place to give some level of protection as to what their future development would be. But that's why we wanted to include that extra kind of jurisdictional, to have a new conversation or an additional conversation with those folks to understand if there are future opportunities that are more connected to what this new vision or more detailed vision for this site is. And so while there's lots of details to iron out as to what that looks like, I think it's a pretty safe bet that public engagement, especially with the adjacent neighbors, would be an utmost priority.
Okay, thank you. 11th Street has a different sort of planning scope or involvement than 6th Avenue, does it not? I'm trying to recall those two planning maps. Well, my interest should.
So 6th.
Yeah.
So 6th Avenue itself as a street has a functional plan in place for its long-term redevelopment. Then London Road London Road neighborhood plan is in place for both the it would be the south side of the street as well as that east side. 11th Street as a street itself doesn't necessarily have a functional plan in place, but it was identified in both the London Road ARP as well as the as well as the Civic Common Master Plan in terms of its opportunity. It's interesting because a lot of times in plans we end at the street, and then the street itself becomes kind of a little bit of a forgotten space. But both plans speak to it, and it would just be about, again, that's a really good value of this project, is to bring those two plans together and make sure that all the pieces align.
Okay, thank you. Second question then, and this just is kind of clarification of what the mayor was asking. Of the funding proposed for this, there's no construction, there's no any sort of underground asset management, nothing of that nature. This is purely for the plan.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Thank you. Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Sherman. Thank you, Mr. Malcolm, very much for the information. I know even when we were talking about the master plan back when we did it a couple of years ago, I think the idea already then was to go on and to go further, because the master plan just sort of gets you started, but certainly doesn't end the process. But if this was approved in this CIP, what's the shelf life of some sort of plan like this? So if we did this and approved it and it was done in next year, the year after, how long is it relevant? Does it have to be redone? So if we spend the money, how well spent is the money if we don't build anything for a while?
In terms of the information that would be gathered through this, there would be, there's always moving pieces, but we'd be able to, I think, add on or understand future infrastructure investments that occur in the area, and have our technical experts within the city organization be able to respond and understand how that changes what the initial plan was. And so I think it would have a fairly long shelf life, barring any sort of major investment that came in and shifted either the site itself or one of the flanking four sides in terms of adjacent development.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Are there any further questions from council? Okay, I see none, so we'll move on with the resolution. 4.2. Okay, this resolution's from Councillor Crowson. Civic Common Comprehensive Site Plan. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the presentation and report as information. Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Again, thank you very much for the presentation and for the information. Certainly this is information we will take into the CIP deliberations. I also just want to remind everyone that when we did the master plan for this, it was one of the largest community engagements we had. The number of people from all sides of the community, west, south, and north, who are involved with this, who care about this community, not just the people who live nearby, who can walk here and be part of it, but from around all of Lethbridge. So this is continuing that conversation that we had with the people in the community a couple of years ago, and now the conversation will be heading into CIP. So hopefully the community will also have a look into this, let us know what they think, and we'll continue from there. And with that, unless there's questions or debate, I'll call the question.
Okay, question has been called. There are no questions, no debate. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that is unanimous. Now we'll move on to 4.4 and the other presentation, which is the Warehouse District Area Redevelopment Plan. Again, Mr. Malcolm.
Thank you again very much. So now I'm going to present on the Warehouse District Area Redevelopment Plan. As noted, another important planning exercise, albeit a different level or type of plan than I just went over with the Civic Common Comprehensive Site Plan. So Yeah, this project, the deliverable is quite simple. It is an area redevelopment plan for the warehouse district neighborhood. An area redevelopment plan is an important statutory document that will establish the regulatory framework for land use policies and supplemental information that really supports strategic, orderly, and appropriate redevelopment investment in the neighborhood. This project is slated to be a $350,000 cost. And I will just point out that the two images here are also precedent images and not preconceived notion of what is to come. Next slide, please. So the warehouse district itself is a 46.5 hectare or 115 acre commercial district located directly east of downtown proper. And serves as the east gateway or approach into downtown and as an important transition area between the neighborhood or residential neighborhoods to the south. As you can see in the image, it extends between Stafford Drive and Mayor McGrath Drive and between Highway 3 and to the south side of 3rd Avenue South. Next slide, please. So when the Heart of Our City Master Plan was completed in 2007, there were some high-level or key objectives that were established for this area, what was at that time referred to as the Upper East Side District. And in that notion, it was only extended until 13th Street as opposed to Mayor McGrath Drive. But further, it was identified that in the implementation plan of the Heart of Our City Master Plan, that in the 11 to 50-year window, we should engage in a comprehensive planning and development exercise when the market conditions were in place to justify or support the efforts. So over the past 3 years, we have entered that window of time, and it is the belief of administration and many in the neighborhood that those conditions are now right, if not actually a year or two overdue. And some of those include challenges with specific land uses and overall social and economic conditions, recently expanded geographic mandate of the Heart of Our City Committee, inclusion in recent amendments and development incentives, great deal of optimism and redevelopment interest in this area, especially due to the incentives put in place. And we are undertaking strategic infrastructure-based planning initiatives in this neighborhood, including the 3rd Avenue beautification or functional planning study. Next slide, please. So this district is really primed for change, and an area redevelopment plan will ensure that this change is appropriate, feasible, and really rooted in community perspectives. While the details on the future of the district will be formulated or based on those that were put in place in the Heart of Our City Master Plan, which focused on creating a built-in social environment that facilitates entrepreneurship, education, innovation, and culture, that may change through public engagement in this process. This may include a district's built form that is walkable with increased densities and a healthy and vibrant mix of uses such as warehousing, office commercial, light industrial, mixed-use residential, live-work opportunities, open spaces, and community amenities. All components that would have been identified in the Heart of Our City Master Plan and which offer a starting point, not necessarily an end point. Again, we need to engage with the community on what their vision for this neighborhood is. Next slide, please. As noted, the deliverable is a completed area redevelopment plan. This is a statutory document that assists municipality in guiding and facilitating redevelopment of an existing area. It would not be our first area development plan in the city. It's reflect or be a component of many others that we have worked on over the past decade or so. This document would provide a community perspective to the land use districts within that area. It would provide an evaluation and understanding for the city of how the district would like to integrate with surrounding areas. It would create a policy framework that would supplement the land use bylaw in terms of providing local context and specific land use and development guidelines for our approving authorities. And it would guide future infrastructure investment to ensure that we can support the desired future state. We do know that this area has very old infrastructure, and there is no doubt that there would be upgrades that would be required at some point in time in order to facilitate anything other than what is there today. This ARP would be developed in alignment with previously established plans, of which there are many, but again, also incorporating community feedback. Next slide, please. So the benefits in connection to existing plans and policies are fairly similar. I really will just draw attention to the first bullet, which is supporting revitalization of the area with the purpose of supporting public and private economic growth and development opportunities. We really are seeing an increase of pressure in this neighborhood, and we think this is a prudent project to undertake at this time. And with that, next slide, and open up for any questions.
Okay, questions from council? So there are none, so this is a planning document, $350,000 to do a little more depth. Is that correct?
I'd say in this case, of this neighborhood, probably a lot more depth. Right now, all we have is one page and lost in about of a 400-page document. This would really be giving this neighborhood some guidance and the city some guidance into what is the future has for this area of the city.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there's no further questions from council, we will thank you for your presentation. I have a resolution here moved by Vice Chair Carlson, a warehouse and district area redevelopment plan. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentation as information. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Mr. Malcolm, for the presentation on this and the work going into it. Unless there's anything further from my colleagues, I will call for the vote.
Okay, question has been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. It's unanimous. So now we'll move on to the submission. Moved by Councillor Parker. Community Section D CIP 2022 to 2031 projects. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the report as information. Councillor Parker.
If anyone has any questions, I have nothing to offer. I just call the question otherwise, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. No questions from council? There are none. Questions been called. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, in-camera resolutions. These ones are also assigned to Vice Chair Carlson. Closed omnibus resolution motion for 6.1, 6.2, and 6.3. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee direct that the closed meeting discussions and documents with respect to the capital improvement program, the gym upsizing, and the school site development remain confidential pursuant to Section 17, harmful to personal privacy, 19, confidential evaluations, and 29, information that is or will be available to the public of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Unless there's anything further from my colleagues, I will call for the vote.
Question has been called. All in favor? Are any opposed? There are none. And another resolution moved by Councillor Carlson, business interest of a third party. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee direct that the closed meeting discussions and documents with respect to business interest of a third party remain confidential pursuant to Section 16, harmful to business interests of a third party of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, and that the committee proceed with the confidential direction provided in camera. Vice Chair Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I will call for the vote.
Question has been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. That is unanimous. I already did.
Oh, it's a different one. Councillor Kaufman has a question.
Okay. So I just have a message from our Secretary Treasurer. At the end of the presentations, if there are any questions from Council related to any of the projects presented over the 4 community days and any other sections, If there are specific questions, they can help answer ahead of time. It will make the week of deliberations go more smoothly. So if there are specific questions, you can certainly ask them during the public meetings. But if you could submit them to the Secretary Treasurer, they would have the answers ready for you as we do the public engagement. So just a request that if there are specific questions, could we please submit them ahead of the public discussions of May the 10th to the 14th, as much as possible. Okay, Ms. Pinkson, would you like to comment or elaborate?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. The only thing I just wanted to highlight was just confirmed that the engagement site will be shut down at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. So for those night owls, if they want to get on there and engage with the information related to the CIP, that's the official shutdown time.
Okay. So public can have input until 7 a.m. tomorrow. Councillor Kaufman?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. It was actually on that point. I just wanted to ask, I should have done this moments after it was mentioned, but is there an opportunity to extend this at least to Friday? I know that the consultants will have done the bulk of the work and they would just be waiting for commentary that comes out of the information today. Yes, this agenda has been public for a week, but we recognize sometimes the community doesn't see it or hear it until it's reported by the media, which I'm assuming will occur tonight and tomorrow. I just think it might be incumbent upon us, if we can get some sort of extension till at least Friday, it does give the public opportunity for feedback. But if there's a million things, I'm sure, around that. If Ms. Pinkson has an answer.
Mayor Spearman, through to Councillor Kaufman. Unfortunately, no, we can't extend it. If we do, then the opportunity for council to see the information and to review the information is lost before the budget deliberation week. So just given all the compressed timelines, the consultant needs 7 days to turn around the information in terms of, and that's their request, that's not on our end, in terms of compiling it and producing a report. And so the longer we extend it, then the less opportunity there is for it to be ready for the 10th or before the 10th, ideally, so that council has time to kind of review the information that's available.
Okay, thank you. Will there be something on that web page then, if people are knowing that that's where they go to provide input, that just send a letter to council, it's officially closed, but just send an email to council or to the clerk's office or to Ms. Pinkson, and that information will be gathered and provided to council?
Sure, we'll add something.
Yeah,
excellent. Thank you.
If it's too late to form part of the report, it would be great if all members of council could get any further written input that came in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Carlson.
Thanks, Mayor Spearman. Just a question on the process that Ms. Pinkson requested us to contact with information. Maybe Mr. Dalton can weigh in. Is it okay for all members of council to have one pinch point where we direct questions to? Is it to Haley? Is it to you? Who are we forwarding those questions to?
I'm certainly happy to have them come to me and be filtered out, but I'll defer to Ms. Pinkson too. If she would like them to go to her, that's fine as well. I think what we're trying to do again is if we can do work between now and that week that council deliberates, we'll be able to set council up to have a better deliberation. So, but I'm happy to take those questions.
Okay, so the process will be, we will send any questions or clarifications we want to our city manager, and then Craig, I'm assuming you will send the response to all of council.
Back to all the council.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. I will direct a question to the city manager. I will send it in writing, but my question is, are all the projects that have been developed by our city departments, do they all have a built-in contingency? Or were the projects developed to get the most efficient and accurate cost? And would there be a contingency amount set aside that could address any variances from precision-based budgets for these projects? So I'm not expecting an answer today, but I'd like to know if there is extra fat. As you know, we have limited dollars available, 50 million roughly to allocate, and it would be nice to know. We could spend it on a few projects and there'd be nothing left to do for anything else. So I'd just like to get a general sense of whether or not we basically allowed for any significant overages within those project budgets, or if they can be trimmed down and there be a general amount for contingencies for all projects. Okay. Thanks. Councillor Kaufman?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I'll actually send my inquiry by email to CAO and all members council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there's no further questions, I have a resolution from Councillor Morrow that we do now adjourn the meeting of the Economic Standing Policy Committee until Monday, May the 10th, 2021. Councillor Morrow?
Question?
Question's been called. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Joe.
Is now exiting.